Once upon a time, in a quiet valley where the mornings were always covered by a soft veil of mist and the air carried a gentle stillness, there lived a young woman of 27 years named Layan. A woman known throughout her village for her kindness, her discipline, and her tireless dedication to her daily work, someone who always helped others with a calm smile. Yet inside her heart there existed a hidden storm that no one else could see, a storm made of restless thoughts, unresolved regrets, and an endless worry about what tomorrow might bring. Because Layan's mind was never truly at rest, and even when her body was still, her thoughts wandered endlessly, replaying old mistakes, imagined failures, and fears that had never happened but felt painfully real to her. Because of this constant noise inside her head, Layan often felt as though she were walking through a tangled forest with no clear path, a place dark and confusing where every thought echoed louder than the last, making it difficult for her to sleep through the night, impossible for her to fully focus during the day, and nearly unthinkable for her to feel genuine joy even in the smallest moments that once made her smile, as if happiness were always just beyond her reach no matter how hard she tried to grasp it. One afternoon, while passing through the village market, Layan overheard a group of travelers speaking in hushed voices about a strange old man who lived far away, deep within a hidden bamboo forest that few people dared to enter. A man they called the Bamboo Keeper, someone who had once been a respected scholar in the city, known for his deep understanding of the human mind, but who had abandoned the noise of the world in his old age to live a simple and silent life surrounded by nature. And they said that people who visited him did not leave with direct answers, but instead returned changed, as if they had discovered something important within themselves. Those words planted a small spark of hope inside Layan's heavy heart, and for the first time in a long while she felt that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to quiet her mind without fighting it. And she thought to herself that if anyone could help her find peace, it might be this mysterious bamboo keeper who lived away from the chaos of ordinary life. At dawn the next morning, Layan packed a small bag with only what she needed, left her village as the sun began to rise, and started her long journey toward the bamboo forest, walking for many days through rolling hills, crossing clear streams, and following narrow woodland paths where sunlight filtered softly between the leaves, each step carrying both exhaustion and hope, until finally one evening she reached a place where the air felt cooler, the wind whispered gently, and tall bamboo trees swayed together as if sharing a quiet song. In the heart of that peaceful forest, Layan noticed a small hut covered in green moss, with birds resting on its roof and a narrow stream flowing nearby like a ribbon of silver. And there on the wooden porch sat an elderly man with a long white beard, calm and steady, carefully carving a bamboo flute with hands that moved slowly but with great precision. Gathering her courage, Layan approached him and spoke honestly, telling him that her mind was full of worries and anxieties, that she could not stop thinking no matter how hard she tried, and that all she wanted was to find peace within herself. And the old man lifted his eyes as calm and still as a quiet lake, and smiled gently before telling her that she had come because she wished to empty her mind, and without saying anything more, he invited her to follow him. The bamboo keeper led Layan behind the hut where long bamboo poles were neatly stacked, selected one smooth, hollow piece and held it out in front of her, showing her that it was completely empty inside. Then he placed it in her hands and instructed her to take it to the small hill beyond the forest, fill it with water from the river and bring it back to him, reminding her that the water she carried could only be what truly belonged to her. Though confused and uncertain how a hollow bamboo tube could possibly hold water, Layan did not question him and made her way to the river, where she dipped the bamboo into the flowing water only to watch it spill out instantly. And she tried again and again, growing more frustrated each time as the bamboo refused to retain even a single drop, until hours passed. The sun began to sink, and exhaustion and anger filled her chest. At last, defeated, Layan returned to the hut holding the empty bamboo, ashamed and disappointed, admitting that she had failed and that no matter how hard she tried, the bamboo could not hold water. And the old man smiled at her with deep understanding, gently taking the bamboo from her hands and explaining that one cannot fill something that is meant to be empty. He tapped the bamboo lightly and told her that its value did not come from being full, but from being empty, because only when empty could it become a flute, only when empty could the wind pass through it and create something beautiful. And then he looked directly at Layan and explained that she had been treating her mind the same way she tried to treat the bamboo, attempting to fill it with fears, regrets, and worries, All things that never stayed and only drained her energy. As Layan stood there in silence, she felt something shift inside her, realizing that all her life she had been clinging to emotions and thoughts that were never meant to remain, holding on to guilt from the past and fear of the future as if they were necessary to survive. And in that realization, her breathing slowed and her shoulders softened, as though a weight she had carried for years was finally loosening its grip. The bamboo keeper placed the bamboo back into her hands and told her that when her mind becomes like the bamboo, hollow, open, and free, only then can peace move through her. And as a gentle breeze passed through the forest, the bamboo around them whispered softly, and Layan felt a calm unlike anything she had known before. A calm that did not come from answers, but from release. The next morning, as the sun rose through the tall bamboo trees, Layan stood outside the hut, feeling lighter than when she had arrived, and the old man handed her a bamboo flute he had carved, telling her it would serve as a reminder to remain open and empty so that peace could always find its way in. And as Layan began her walk back toward her village, she sensed that although her journey home had begun, something within her was still unfolding, something that had not yet fully revealed itself, something that would continue to grow as long as she remembered what the bamboo had taught her. As Layan walked away from the bamboo forest, the path ahead felt familiar yet strangely different, as though the world itself had not changed but the way she perceived it had softened. And with each step her mind attempted to return to its old habits, replaying memories and imagining outcomes. Yet now those thoughts no longer held the same weight they once did, drifting through her awareness like passing clouds instead of anchoring storms. And although moments of doubt still appeared, she noticed for the first time that she did not need to follow every thought that arose within her. During her journey back, Layan passed through the same hills and streams she had crossed before, but now she moved with a quieter presence, listening more to the rhythm of her breath and the sounds around her, realizing that silence was not the absence of noise but the absence of resistance. And this understanding slowly settled into her heart as she remembered the hollow bamboo and the way it allowed the wind to pass freely without trying to trap it. When she finally reached the edge of her village, familiar faces greeted her, and daily life resumed its usual pace. Yet something subtle had changed in Layan's way of being, because when problems arose or expectations pressed upon her, she no longer reacted immediately, instead pausing, breathing, and allowing space between herself and her thoughts, discovering that in this space there was clarity she had never known before. Still, the old patterns did not disappear entirely, and on certain nights Layan found herself lying awake as memories of past mistakes tried to resurface, whispering doubts into her mind. But instead of fighting them or trying to silence them by force, she reached for the bamboo flute the bamboo keeper had given her, holding it gently and remembering that emptiness was not a weakness, but a doorway through which peace could enter. With time, Layan began to notice that people around her were drawn to her presence without knowing why, sensing a calm within her that did not demand attention or validation. And some would ask how she had changed, while others simply felt at ease in her company. And although Layan never tried to explain what she herself did not fully understand yet, she knew that something within her was still unfolding, slowly reshaping her relationship with herself and the world. There were moments when fear returned unexpectedly, moments when the future seemed uncertain and the past felt heavy again. But now Layan recognized these moments not as failures, but as invitations to let go once more, to empty her mind again and again, just as the bamboo remains hollow not once, but always. And through this repetition she began to understand that peace was not a destination she could reach and keep forever, but a practice that required constant release. As days turned into weeks, Layan found herself standing by the river one evening, watching the water flow endlessly forward without clinging to where it had been. And she realized that her life, too, was meant to move in this way, unburdened by what could not be carried, guided not by control but by acceptance. And this realization opened a deeper layer of awareness within her that she had only just begun to touch. Sometimes, when the village grew quiet and the stars filled the sky, Layan would close her eyes and feel the same breeze she had felt in the bamboo forest, sensing that the lesson she had received was far from complete, that the true challenge lay not in understanding the teaching, but in living it each day as new situations tested her ability to remain open, hollow, and free. And somewhere deep within her, she knew that her journey with the bamboo keeper had not truly ended, but had only begun. As the seasons shifted and the air in the valley slowly changed, Layan began to realize that emptiness was not something she achieved once and carried forever, but something she had to return to each time life tried to fill her again with unnecessary weight. And there were mornings when she woke up feeling light and present, and others when old fears crept back into her thoughts, reminding her that the mind, much like the river, never stops moving. At work and in her daily routines, Layan noticed how often people spoke not from awareness but from habit, repeating worries, complaints, and expectations as though they were unavoidable truths. And although she listened with compassion, she no longer absorbed their emotional burdens as her own. Understanding that just as the bamboo could not hold water, her mind did not need to retain every emotion that passed through it. There were moments when Layan felt tempted to return to her old way of thinking, especially when faced with uncertainty or when she made small mistakes, but instead of allowing guilt to grow roots within her, she gently reminded herself that guilt, like fear, only existed when she tried to cling to what had already passed. And by letting go again and again, she discovered a quiet strength forming beneath her calm surface. One evening, while walking alone near the edge of the village, Layan heard the distant sound of bamboo moving in the wind, and for a brief moment she felt as though the forest itself was calling her back, not physically, but inwardly, urging her to deepen her understanding of what it truly meant to remain open without becoming empty of purpose, free without becoming lost. She began to see that emptiness did not mean absence of feeling, but clarity of feeling, not the suppression of thoughts, but the freedom to choose which ones deserved her attention. And this awareness changed the way she approached her own emotions, allowing her to experience sadness without drowning in it and joy without clinging to it in fear of loss. As Layan continued to practice this inner release, her reactions softened, her patience deepened, and her words carried a gentleness that came not from effort but from alignment. And those who spent time with her sensed that she no longer sought control over outcomes, only presence within each moment. Yet even with this growing calm, Layan knew that her journey was still unfolding, because true emptiness required courage, the courage to trust life without gripping it tightly, the courage to stand in uncertainty without rushing to fill the silence with noise. And as she stood beneath the open sky one night, feeling the cool air on her skin, she sensed that deeper lessons were waiting for her, lessons that would challenge her in ways she could not yet foresee, and that her understanding of peace had only reached its first layer, with many more still to be revealed as her path continued forward without a clear end in sight. As time moved forward and life continued to unfold in ways both gentle and challenging, Layan began to understand that the quiet she carried within her was not a shield against difficulty, but a way of meeting difficulty without being consumed by it. And this realization slowly changed the way she walked through her days, because even when uncertainty appeared, it no longer felt like an enemy chasing her, but like a shadow that only existed when she stood against the light instead of turning toward it. There were days when unexpected situations arose, moments when plans failed, words were misunderstood, or outcomes did not align with her hopes. And in the past, such moments would have pulled her into a spiral of self-judgment and anxious anticipation. Yet now she noticed a pause forming naturally within her, a brief silence between the event and her response, and inside that silence there was room to breathe, room to choose, room to remain hollow like the bamboo rather than rigid like stone. Layan began to sense that much of human suffering came not from what happened, but from the constant resistance to what was, and as she observed this truth within herself, she also saw it reflected in others, in their hurried steps, tense voices, and restless eyes, all searching for peace while unknowingly filling their minds with noise. And although she did not speak of her realization openly, her presence alone seemed to soften the space around her. Sometimes, while sitting quietly at dusk, Layan reflected on the bamboo keeper's words, understanding more deeply that emptiness was not about erasing oneself, but about removing what was never truly part of her essence. And as this understanding matured, she began to feel less defined by her past experiences and more rooted in the present moment, where life was actually happening. Yet the journey inward was not always smooth, because there were nights when old memories surfaced without warning, memories tied to regret, missed opportunities, or moments she wished she had handled differently. And instead of pushing them away, Layan allowed them to pass through her awareness like wind through bamboo, noticing that when she did not cling to them, they lost their power to wound her. In these moments, she discovered that forgiveness was not something she had to force, but something that naturally emerged when the mind stopped holding tightly to old narratives. And this forgiveness extended not only to others, but to herself, releasing her from the silent burden she had carried for years without realizing it. As Layan's inner world grew quieter, her perception of time began to shift as well, because she no longer lived constantly pulled backward by the past or pushed forward by the future, and instead found herself inhabiting the present with a fullness she had never known before, where even ordinary moments carried a subtle richness that required no explanation. She noticed how the sound of footsteps on the ground, the rhythm of her breath, and the movement of clouds across the sky all seemed to speak the same quiet language, reminding her that life flowed effortlessly when not resisted. And in these moments she felt deeply connected to something larger than herself, something that did not need to be named. Occasionally, Layan wondered whether she would ever return to the bamboo forest, whether she would see the bamboo keeper again. But each time this thought arose, she sensed that the true forest now existed within her, and that the old man's guidance continued to unfold through her own experiences rather than through his physical presence. With this understanding, Layan became more attentive to the subtle signals of her inner state, noticing when her mind began to fill again with unnecessary tension, expectations, or imagined outcomes, and gently releasing them before they could take root, just as one clears fallen leaves to keep a path open. There were days when this practice felt effortless and others when it required patience and humility, but Layan no longer judged herself for either, knowing that the bamboo does not question the wind that passes through it, nor does it try to decide which breeze deserves to stay. As her awareness deepened, Layan started to realize that peace was not something separate from life's challenges, but something that existed alongside them, woven into the very fabric of experience, accessible whenever she remembered to let go. And this realization filled her with a quiet confidence that did not seek recognition or validation. Standing one evening beneath a sky slowly darkening with stars, Layan felt the same stillness she had felt in the bamboo forest, sensing that her journey was expanding rather than concluding, and that each new phase of her life would invite her to empty herself once again, to release new attachments she had not yet encountered, and to trust the space that remained. And somewhere deep within her, a knowing emerged, subtle but unwavering, that the path she walked had no final destination, only deeper layers of understanding, each revealed not through effort, but through surrender. And as the night air moved gently around her, Layan remained still, open, and attentive, aware that the silence she had discovered was not an ending, but an open doorway through which life continued to move, endlessly, patiently, waiting for her to remain hollow enough to listen. As the days continued to unfold after Layan's return to the village, she slowly became aware that the real test of what she had learned did not appear in moments of calm, but in moments of pressure, when expectations rose, when misunderstandings surfaced, and when life demanded decisions without offering clear answers. And it was precisely in these moments that her practice of inner emptiness was challenged again and again. There were times when familiar doubts resurfaced, whispering that perhaps she had changed only temporarily, that peace was fragile and easily lost. Yet instead of believing these thoughts, Layan began to observe them from a distance, recognizing that they were not commands she had to obey, but passing mental habits that no longer defined her identity. She noticed how the mind often tried to protect itself by predicting outcomes, rehearsing conversations, and imagining failures. And although these patterns once felt necessary, Layan now saw them as subtle forms of fear, attempts to control what could not be controlled. And with each realization, she practiced letting go once more, emptying herself not through effort, but through awareness. As her inner space expanded, Layan discovered that silence itself began to speak, not with words, but with intuition, guiding her gently through daily choices, helping her sense when to act and when to wait, when to speak and when to remain quiet. And this sensitivity gave her a confidence that did not depend on certainty, only on presence. People in the village began to notice that Layan listened differently now, not rushing to respond, not interrupting with advice or judgment, but holding space with a calm attention that made others feel seen and understood. And without realizing it, she became a quiet refuge for those whose minds were heavy, just as hers once had been. Yet Layan knew that this role was not something she needed to claim or maintain, because attachment even to calm itself could become another form of clinging. And she reminded herself often that the bamboo remained hollow not because it tried to be useful, but because it allowed life to move through it naturally. On certain evenings, when the village settled into stillness and the sky darkened into deep shades of blue, Layan would walk alone and reflect on how far she had come, not in distance, but in depth, understanding that the greatest journeys are not measured by miles traveled, but by layers of self released. She began to sense that the mind, when left unburdened, possessed an innate intelligence, a natural rhythm that aligned effortlessly with life, and that much of human suffering arose from mistrust of this rhythm, from the constant attempt to interfere, manage, and control what already knew how to flow. This insight did not make Layan immune to emotion, but it changed her relationship with it, allowing her to feel sadness without becoming lost in it, joy without fearing its end, and uncertainty without rushing to escape it. And in this balanced awareness, her inner world grew both softer and stronger. At times, memories of the bamboo keeper returned vividly, not as images of his face, but as echoes of his presence, reminders that true guidance does not impose direction, but reveals what was already waiting to be discovered. And Layan understood that the lesson of the bamboo was not a metaphor to remember, but a way of being to embody. As she continued to live from this understanding, Layan sensed that her life was quietly preparing her for deeper lessons yet to come, lessons that would not announce themselves clearly, but would arrive disguised as challenges, changes, and moments of uncertainty, each one inviting her to empty herself again, to trust space over control and openness over resistance. And so, without seeking answers, without rushing toward conclusions, Layan remained attentive, receptive, and present, aware that the silence she carried within her was not static, but alive, responsive, and endlessly unfolding, and that as long as she honored this space, her journey would continue to deepen, revealing new dimensions of peace not as an escape from life, but as a way of moving fully within it, moment by moment, without needing to know where the path would ultimately lead.